Hey there, entrepreneurs. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Small Business Chronicles. I am your co host and serial entrepreneur, Brian Stone. And as you guys know, this show really doesn't have any boundaries in terms of the kind of conversations we have. We love talking to all aspects of small and medium sized businesses. And I absolutely adore having the opportunity to, um, you know, have these conversations with fantastic business minded individuals and bring them to you guys. So, we'll jump right in. I've got a great guest today. I'm actually meeting with Don McLaughlin, and he is the founder and CEO of the Dream Exit. He deals with exit strategies as well as peak performance within a business. So he touches on a lot of different topics, and I know that it's going to be a valuable conversation no matter where you are in business. So we'll jump right in. Don, how are you today?
Terrific, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, likewise. So, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I'm excited to have the conversation, but I'm sure that a little context would be beneficial for anybody that's out there listening that is trying to determine if they want to commit their commute to the rest of our conversation today.
Sure, Brian. Trained and practiced as a lawyer. Actually started as a government prosecutor. Led into a position in a big Fortune 500 in the midst of the Enron Arthur Andersen legal fiasco. Quest Communications is where I was stationed as an in-house lawyer, and that led to what's turned into an entrepreneurial career centered around tech and legal tech in particular. And that's really been so formative for me over the past 20 years, both as a lawyer and then turned tech entrepreneur. And we can certainly get into that experience. And it was for me sort of the full spectrum of entrepreneurship, from founding a business with 0 employees to growing it to 75 employees and ultimately exiting. Through the midst of that journey, I hit some hard times, as entrepreneurs often do, and that's what I really like to share my experience, because I benefited so much from hearing about other entrepreneurs' experience, and I'm so happy to do so today.
Well, and I appreciate that perspective, Don, your background and your willingness to share too, because a lot of times we kind of gloss over the emotional and the tactical aspect of being stuck right in that messy point in your business, and everybody hits those, right? I mean, it's inevitable. If you're in business and you want to have success, you will hit a point of stress and where you're just going through both a business and potentially a personal breakdown, right? But we don't often share the stories there. So tell us a little bit about that journey. I mean, I know that the tech industry is unique, but business challenges are not, right? So where did you hit that breaking point where you had to push your way through?
Yeah, Brian, I think you hit the nail on the head that, everyone goes through it. I think it's, just part of entrepreneurship, and you go through these phases, right? And I think for me, I founded a business just prior to the 2008 financial crisis, and that stung, right? Just as I'm, borrowing money, building, out server racks, to support the business on the tech side, and it really faced those challenges with uncertainty. And our focus in particular was on large Fortune 500 companies that were often the subject of government investigations or lawsuits, and electronic data was our specialty, right? Helping organizations better identify, analyze, review, and then produce information. So high stakes. Our clients were often, unfortunately, in major news outlets. And, I got to a point after a couple of years where, we started to just hit those growing pains of, a plateau. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, except that right out of the gate, our business grew very, very rapidly. And then again, in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, it was 2009, 2010. It crept into those years. It prolonged. in a way that really impacted me as the founder. And I think the biggest hurdle, Brian, was that I was so used to understanding every aspect of our clients' challenges, and in that way, I had my hands in every aspect of the business, and in that way, I really just I became a hurdle to the business being able to navigate some of those challenges, because I was overly involved in micromanaging in ways, and then handling every meeting, and basically selling every opportunity in ways that just weren't sustainable. It ground me down physically, emotionally. And unfortunately, I started to cope in unhealthy ways. And ultimately that looked like, antidepressants. I really experienced, severe bouts of, anxiety and depression. And then, I'm not proud to admit that, alcohol became an outlet, not in a, off the rails dysfunctional way, but in such a consistent way that I knew it wasn't helping me. And you sort of get the picture. It was a downward spiral. And ultimately, I really did hit a very, very hard moment, a rock bottom moment that I know for certain when it happened. And it was a real turning point for me, because at that point, business had been operating for 5 years. We had some major corporate clients, huge upside opportunity, but I was, I was sliding sideways a bit, and hence so was the business. And so it was from that experience of, sort of that dark place. The dark night of the soul is often referred to as the precursor of so much better. And it certainly was for me. And there's a few key things that I learned out of that experience that I'm happy to dive into more.
Well, Donna, and first of all, I appreciate your vulnerability and your transparency, right? Because you're not alone. I mean, I've talked to other business owners in private settings most often, right? Because it's not something that everybody's proud of, but it's also relatable, right? I mean, look, I did it for a while, and I called it networking. It was like, oh yeah, I'm just, that's good business. I'm going to go out and have a bourbon, have a cigar, and do that, 3 nights a week, or maybe even more, right? And it gets to the point where you're like, okay, I know this is no longer serving me, because your business will only grow to the extent that you do, and the opposite is true, right? Too, because if you start, as you said, start slipping sideways, it's an open door, if you're too involved in the business, in particular, for the business to follow suit, right?
That's right.
Speed of leader, speed of the pack, right? I mean, it's there's all kinds of sayings that are out there that are buzzworthy, but in reality, it's true. It's true. I mean, you have to have the right healthy mindset if you want to lead.
And that's where it started for me, Brian. On that morning, November 3rd, 2012, for me, it was about just a complete reorientation to my business and my life generally. Right, I'd grown to sort of loathe this business that was, had so much incredible potential, and was already at that point, $5 million a year in revenue, and yet was at risk, because I was at risk. And the mind one that I'd grown to, in certain respects, I'd grown to take the business for granted, the service that we were delivering, and I'd lost sight of what propelled me to found the business to begin with. And it was in that dark moment that I reconnected with, the passion that drove me to found the business, the problem that I was solving that I knew so intimately, but then the purpose for which the business existed, which was to serve our clients, and also to grow as a team, right? To see my team grow. And that was, again, a very pivotal moment, because all of a sudden I regained a clarity that I'd lost. And I was fully aligned with the objective of putting all of myself back into the business, of the best that I could do, and let go of so many things that were weighing me down. Fears about, what if I lost this client? What if the business went under? What would people think of me? I just let go of all that, and I just, as cliche as it sounds, I sort of surrendered to the service of being the leader of this business, the leader at that time, 3 young kids of my family, and what a difference it made from that moment forward. I rededicated myself to the business in a big way and saw an opportunity to grow it for the right reasons, right? Not just to grow revenue, but to grow it because we could have a more positive impact on the clients we were serving, and importantly, see my team grow in their professional careers. And boy, then it was just like a rocket ship after that point, Brian.
Well, and people talk all the time about, oh, you have to have a clear vision, but they don't talk about the energy that fulfillment of that mission, of that vision actually, gives you, right? Because it is energizing. It does allow you to catapult through what would otherwise be rocky waters,
That
right? So, I mean, what was your path forward there? Is there any, in that moment, in that time frame, was there any key actions that you took that you believe were the right ones to get you going in the right direction?
Yeah, there were a few, Brian. I knew that I had to first and foremost double down on this commitment that I made that morning, which is to get myself, in a much better place. And I knew that started with just how I was managing my lifestyle. Right, I had to take exercise more seriously. I had to focus more on nutrition and just manage my energy more effectively than the unhealthy coping strategies that I mentioned earlier. So that was a key component I knew. And the second was that I had to scale the business in the sense that I sort of, as I said before, I'd become a bottleneck in the business, and I created this own sort of trap for myself where I felt, just chained to the business. And to get out of that, I knew I had to foster and build team and just give my team a path for increased leadership in a way I hadn't been doing. I'd been gripping the reins of the business so much that had been limiting the business and limiting their growth. So those were the 2 primary things. And, there's smaller things within those. So for example, on the lifestyle side, I just needed to start my day better and have some little tiny routines that would get me off on the right foot, right? With, for me, that was reading some philosophy and just doing a period of reflection. And, whether you want to call it meditation or not, just sitting quietly and connecting with my breath, that became a regular practice. Did I do it every single day? Absolutely not. But more often than not, I did. And I noticed differences in how I showed up day to day. And that was reflected back from my senior team. They said, you were gone, and then you were back in a big way. And then the business just really started to flourish, I think in part because I broke free of that trap, and I really enabled the team to start to drive the business. I became more transparent with them about where we were, where I was, where I wanted to go, and everybody sort of started rowing in the same direction, and it became a lot more fun. I mean, I just can't tell you what a difference it was. I went from dragging and just sort of suffering to just soaring with the team, and it became a true joy.
I love that. I love that for you. I love that for your team, and I also love that because I relate to it, right? I mean, I think that the way that you start your day is huge, right? And for those of you that are watching, you probably can't see it, and those that are listening, I know you can't see it, but all the way in the back, and you might notice this, Don. I've got a book there that is right about there. It's actually called The Daily Stoic, and so I don't know if you're familiar with that, Ryan Holiday.
I love it. I kid you not. Hand on heart, Brian. I am on year 6 of the Daily Stoic.
Every day, every day. And obviously, I'm not perfect. I'm right there with you. But man, to stop and start your morning by just celebrating thought, right? And just thinking about what the day might bring is huge, right? And this is not a promotion for Ryan's book, and it's not his philosophy. It's his interpretation of the philosophy of, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, these great Stoic philosophers of the past. And for some people, it's a faith-based reading on whatever their faith is. It doesn't have to be the same, but that morning ritual absolutely sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it really does. It's standard issue for my clients. That's one of the books that's part of our work, and that perspective of other leaders that have gone before and dealt with far more trying at time challenges than I'm dealing with now, just provides that perspective at the start of the day. And what a difference it makes how we show up as leaders.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, we've hit on some of the mess, right? We've hit on how to break through that with some thoughtful habits, personal habits, right, that actually bleed into the business and allow you to show up in a better way. You also talked a lot about growth, which also leads to a reduction in dependency risk, right? Kind of leading into talking about exit, right? Because as you mentioned, if you're holding on to everything out of an effort to control your business, you're actually making your valuation lower, right? So I want to get your insight on that, right? I mean, because we've talked about your own personal journey, but how did you launch that into uh, arriving at a place of real profitability and saleability?
It's a great question, Brian, and it eluded me for a while, and it took a while to make that transition. But get just sort of breaking free of that trap, really looking to my team to take on more leadership, while at the same time, my setting the vision and priorities, right? Certainly with their input, because they're closer to the problem in many respects, and how to best serve clients. That did two things principally. One is it started to create a business that was self-perpetuating without me being on the gears, grinding it day in and day out, right? Which
Yes.
was fascinating to see, and the team enjoying that, welcoming the opportunity to take a more leadership position in their own roles, right? And we had a whole variety. We had admins to lawyers that focused on specific aspects of legal discovery, right? And then the second thing it did remarkably, Brian, is it freed me up to spend more time with my young family, to double down on the exercise that I mentioned earlier, which for me turned into long distance trail running in the Colorado mountains, which was a big part of my turnaround as well. Is just the space that created, the exercise, and all of a sudden I also had more time for strategy, right? And really, being more thoughtful about key decisions at inflection points in the business, and some of those related to when's the best time to exit. And I gave a lot of thought to what were our opportunities, who might be good suitors, focusing on strategic buyers, because I had a sense reading magazines and articles in Inc. magazine and elsewhere that the strategic buyer, right, that buyer that really sees the opportunity to take your business and really, explode it, that's became a focus of me, for me, in those months after this sort of turnaround. And so, I think that I started to see this business take on a life all its own, and then a few strategic buyers saw that too. They saw a business that was not dependent on Don McLaughlin, who had this, a great origin story as a founder, but all of a sudden now they saw a business that they could just grow. And that's exactly what happened. When I stepped down from that business after exiting, we were doing roughly 15 million a year. a foundation that they could grow, onto, and is so immensely rewarding.
Well, and that, I think that's all a result of that self-perpetuation that you talk about. Because you talked about it in the business sense, but it also occurs personally, right? If you are a founder and CEO, then you're also, whether you like it or not, you're wearing that visionary hat, and you have to give yourself space to make those critical decisions and make them thoughtfully. And if you're in the operator hat, if you're in the operator mode for 6, 8, 10 hours a day for 4 to 5 days a week, whatever your schedule, or worse, right? For some of those that are out there listening, then you're not giving yourself the space to make good, solid decisions and be a visionary for your people. You're just not, right? You can't make those strategic decisions if you're not allowing yourself to sit and reflect and determine what strategy you should take.
That's right, and it takes discipline. In my experience, it took real discipline. And to be clear, too, this is not like going off on a yoga retreat for weeks at a time. No,
Sure. Yeah.
this is committing to, for 45 minutes over my lunch break or an hour, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to step aside from the deluge of things, right, and information, and I'm going to invest that time in creating that space. Brian, you're exactly right.
Yeah, I think to the founder of the brokerage I'm actually a part of, I'll give him a name drop because I'm sure he listens all the time. Gary Keller with Keller Williams Realty. This is guy is he's a titan, right? And one thing, if you hear any of his speaking early on, that was a non-negotiable was his lunch with his son every single day. I mean, like that was like that time was sacred. You didn't interrupt him, or you didn't have a job, right? It was that important. And he also had blocked his time for his priorities to work on his strategic decisions too, right? And like you, also removed himself from the operator and president and CEO role, and allowed somebody else to move up so he could move on to the next thing, right? So we see this happen over and over and over again. So your story, while is unique because it's yours, right? The pathway there is absolutely applicable to other people that are in different parts of their own journey.
Yes, that's right. And I love how you touch on Gary's transition, which I think is an important one for those looking ahead toward their exit, is that there is something pulling them forward, right? That they have something beyond their exit rather than just the exit in and of itself, which is unavoidable. I think in certain respects, you hit that kind of milestone, it is something to celebrate, but it can't be the end all be all, because as I experienced, and I think so many other entrepreneurs who successfully exit, it can be disorienting, right? And because you've built your whole life around creating this business and growing it, and then when you sell it, what's next? I think giving thought to that pre-exit is very beneficial, because there's too many business owners who sell their business and they're dissatisfied. I think there's a number of 75% are dissatisfied within a year of exit. And I think that's heavily tied to giving thought to what's pulling you forward, what's next.
Well, the analogy I'll give it, it's you board an airplane, right? You take your flight, your business is there. Wherever you land and exit is not where you started. And if you don't know where you're you know, disembarking, right? If you don't know what country you're in, it can absolutely be disorienting, right? But it's not an ending, right? I think people need to correct their mindset around that too. Exiting your business, selling your business, retiring, whatever name you associate with it. That's just one phase within your lifespan and whatever it is that you are wanting to impact in the people that you interact with on a daily basis. So it should be a lot of thought. There should be a lot of thought put into, okay, what am I going to do when I'm no longer income dependent, financial dependent? What kind of impact do I choose to make with the people that are either close to me or broader? And how can I position myself strategically so that when I do exit, I can do that next best thing.
That's right. And that may be investing more time as it was for me, It's spending more time with my kids at an age when I know it was formative, right, in their teenage years. And for others, it's going to be something else, right? And not necessarily have to jump into the next thing immediately, but to have some clarity around what's pulling me forward as opposed to what's pushing me out, which is where I think things can go a little bit squirrely.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Don, I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. I know that there's a whole lot more that we could get into, but I also want to be respectful of your time and our listeners' time. So um, I'll end by saying this. I mean, what would you say is the most important strategy that you learned? We talked about the messiness. We talked about your story. What would be the one thing that you could share that other people could take to heart if they're struggling with their own business journey?
You two sides of the same coin: clarity and alignment, right? Clarity around what's my purpose in my business, in my leadership role, both in the business and outside the business, and then being aligned with that vision going forward, right? What's the future of the business, and then what's my future, right? Those two in particular are essential.
Awesome. Great thought. Love that clarity and alignment. Yeah, that's everything. So yeah, or at least it's a very good place to start, right? And revisit. So, Don, I really appreciate the conversation. And look, if you guys have enjoyed it too, we'll make sure in the show notes you guys know how to get a hold of Don. And if you're interested in leveling up your strategy, making sure you're prepped to exit, whatever that looks like for you, whatever your time frame is, make sure you reach out. Don, if they want to do that, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Best is thedreamexit.com. Easy enough. Thedreamexit.com is the best place. And then just on social, Don McLaughlin Jr. is the best place to connect with me on social and LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Well, again, I appreciate your time today and really, really enjoy the conversation. And again, your willingness to share.
This has been delightful for me, Brian. Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And look, if you guys are listening out there and you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did, make sure that you save us, follow for more conversations, do all the podcast stuff, give us a review. I would love to hear feedback. And I love stories. So if you are taking something from this conversation and it's having an impact on you, your business, or you personally, please share it with me. I would love to know so I can share it with our listeners because that's what this is all about. We're building this community to help you in business wherever you are in that journey. And so stick around for more great conversations coming up. Keep that entrepreneurial spirit alive. If you're out there hustling, keep doing it. And keep in mind that no matter how small your business is, you still have a big story to share. So we'll tune in another time for another conversation. Thanks again, Don. Have a great day.